Welcome to the Ronan Bell Show. This conversation is going to kick off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ray, brother, it's a pleasure having you on the show today, my guy.
Thank you, Ronan. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited. I got to listen to a couple of shows before this, and I'm just excited for what you got for me in store today.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. It's nice, going back and forth and talking to like all these different people. You get, not overwhelmed. That's not the word that I'm looking for, but you hear a lot of different things. But it's just like what I want to do. Talking to a bunch of different people about their experiences. So, Ray, man, you got a lot on your plate. Let's start from the beginning. So basically, when did you start going into like the idea of like, I want to do like sports broadcasting and just like talk show TV or anchoring?
So when I was much younger, I had I'm going to be a baseball player. Like, most of us are like, yeah, we're going to be professional athletes. And then I really started to play baseball, and it became very apparent that I might not be a middle school baseball player. But early on, I really like Harry Callis was someone that like everyone just kind of beloved. And I kind of saw like his job, and I was like, that's so cool. He talks about baseball, like totally underrating how difficult it is to do this job. I was like, oh, he gets to talk about sports. That's sick. I'm in. Sign me up. So from a young age, I was doing like PA announcing at Upper Providence Little League. And that was like, look at the kid up in the box that's got the mic and is just loud and obnoxious. And from there, I went to sports broadcasting camp. I kind of started to hone skills there. And I mean, RCTV at Springford, I'll continue to attribute so much of what I do to them because they did so much for me. And I know if Merge listens to this, she's going to immediately text me and say, you have to stop giving me credit for what you're doing. But Merge did so much. They did so much for me there. Bonnets, Rothamel, all of them at RCTV. And that's where I really started to get reps. And I had DeBundo there, which was like, a cheat sheet.
Oh, yeah.
Professional. Yeah. I mean, the two of us being there at the same time was a real benefit for me and probably a little bit of a drag for him. And so, I mean, it was all the steps throughout the way that once I got to Temple, it was kind of like, I have a wealth of experience. Please give me opportunities. Give me something that I can tangibly do. And from the first week I was here, I was involved in radio, involved in TV. And since that point, I've just kind of kept keeping on.
Yeah, hey man, I love the plug, Ray. Great plug. But so I thought it was really interesting that you said like it is hard to talk like in that sense. Like being a sports broadcaster, it is way harder than people think. It's not just, you're talking for 2 hours about the baseball game. There's a lot of preparation that goes into that, right? Like you have to like pronunciation in general.
Yes, pronunciation's a big thing. You got a lot of calling of press contacts like, hey, how do you say these three names? Like you feel like obnoxious because these people are around them every day. They know how to pronounce the names, but you want to make sure you get it right. And that's the biggest thing, honestly, getting it right on a broadcast. Like Sunday Night Baseball last week had a couple of real bad miscues on Phillies Mets in terms of what they were doing, and they got dragged online because the real art of it is getting it right, being correct, and being direct in what you're saying. Just an example for how difficult this can be at times. I did a showcase over the summer. I found Du Bois, Pennsylvania. I don't know if you've ever been, you ever heard. Very nice little town up there, about an hour and a half northwest of State College. I got told on Friday they needed someone for Monday and was dropped. I had to prepare for 6 games of a bunch of high school kids who I had never, ever heard of, seen before. And at that point, you're just scrambling to grab any little nugget, like off the internet. Apparently, this kid's got a good fastball. Let's see what happens. So it was a lot of that for me. It was a lot of, how much prep can you do? And then you're doing a whole four games in one day. Like that's a lot of talking points that you're just trying to salvage throughout an entire broadcast. So for me, there's just a ton to do when it comes to preparation. And if you're not prepared, the broadcast is going to suffer.
Right. It's behind the end product. What really goes into the thing that you're like trying to achieve, whether it be doing a podcast, broadcasting, like being a professional athlete, like there is some training that goes into it. Like I'm sure when you look back at some of the RCTV things that you did that you're like, oh my God. I did the same thing with like some of my first podcasts. I'm like, oh my God, this sounds atrocious.
I can't wait for the day they pull the first broadcast I did with Debundo over a soccer game. Let's be clear. I started with a soccer game. I know nothing about soccer. I was tagged to be a color commentator with Debundo for soccer. Oh my God, it's brutal to listen to. I remember Bonnet sat me down the next day and it was like a 15, 20-minute conversation about, we know you're good. You have to know you're good. You have to understand that, like, be confident in what you're delivering. Just relax, talk sports. I mean, those types of conversations, again, Steve Bonnet did so much for me. And he really, those types of conversations were what kind of laid the groundwork, because I could do it, but there's a whole nother thing in your head about actually going and doing it.
Oh, 100%. And like you were saying, like, confidence is a huge thing, especially about talking, because there's no cuts, right?
No.
If there is, it's very slight and maybe fractions of a second. When you're on live TV, like, I can edit this podcast. Like if I'm saying 15 times, I can make it sound like I said it 10. But when you're doing live, you have to make sure that you're very concise in what you say, and also make sure that everything that you're saying makes sense. Because I know sometimes when I'm doing episodes like this, I'm watching it back, I'm like, am I even speaking English right now?
Yeah, I mean, live for me, it's become more of a comfort thing. Honestly, now I rather do it live than do it recorded. Because if I do it recorded, I'm thinking like, oh, I could probably make that sound better. Oh, we should go back and do this. And everyone's like, no, shut up. We're fine. And fine works when it's live. Fine doesn't work when it's recorded. So I'd rather do it live. Give me everything you've got. Give me a live shot at it, because I think that makes you perform the best. The whole pressure makes diamonds or whatever. If you're live, you're going to bring it. You're going to have to bring it. Otherwise, it's going to be real noticeable. And that, for me, I love doing things live now. I'm all about, when we got back in the studio this semester, because everything we did Al Sports Update TV wise last fall was virtual and it was recorded, pre-recorded. We got back in the studio this semester, did things live. Oh, it was the greatest rush of adrenaline ever. I was up, ready to go. I didn't need coffee in the morning. I was just strictly vibes going into that studio because I knew it was going to be live. I knew we were going to have a fun time with it.
Yeah. How was that, doing pretty much everything COVID related? I mean, a podcast is a little bit different, like Zoom recording. This is a one-on-one conversation, right? With a TV production. There could be 7 different people talking. Editing that all up is probably a nightmare. I can't even imagine. So how was that? Just like trying to get everything coordinated during, the COVID time.
Well, for my producers, I want to say thank you, because they did all the editing for that. I did a lot of script writing, script reading, and, reporting. As for the editing, that was a lot of my producers putting that together. So they had a lot of work on their plate. That was a lot of hours for them, and they did a tremendous job with it. But for us here, it's been interesting, because the fall we were very, very much virtual. We were not really on campus at all. Especially the radio station here, we have been on Discord just about, we were on Discord. We attached it to the computer in the station. Don't ask me how it works. We have a chief engineer for that. If you want his contact, John Magala, I'll write it down. You can talk to him. Great guy. But we got on Discord, and that's how we were doing remote broadcasting. We could access the desktop remotely. So people are broadcasting from their houses. And if you can imagine radio already being a totally audio platform, if the hosts can't see each other, there's a lot of talking over. And there's also, if they don't know each other, the little sarcastic or like dry humor remarks can become very confusing. So it took a lot to get people on board and get people really rolling with that type of set. But we were happy just to be on the air, because we weren't on the air at the end of last spring.
Trying to read people over a screen is nearly impossible. I can't tell, like, when, like, on some podcasts, when people are like about to stop talking, I'm like, and I come in and I'm like, oh, like, I have no idea. Like, that's not how a conversation's supposed to go. But it is hard trying to, adapt to that. But I mean, you have to. It's straight up during that COVID time. If anything, it taught you how to adapt to pretty much everything that you do, and especially working in production and terms of broadcasting and things like that, because everything is pretty much pre-recorded rather than, doing a live show. And especially that camaraderie between, like, the other people on the show, kind of like, it loses its humanity feel to it. And it's just not, it's not the same environment that, like, you're used to.
Yeah, I mean, I was blessed that the show I did in the fall, TV wise, that was with people I'd worked with before. So like we kind of had that, but it's difficult because when I'm getting up and I'm getting excited, I'm really stuck to the chair because the Zoom screen is only so big. You know, you're going from these high quality, and plus my camera quality is crap. Okay, this is like I love my Mac. Apple, if you want to sponsor me, we could do an ad. I would love to. But the camera quality, like I'm trying to put together a reel to go get a job, and I'm sitting here on this cloudy screen when we had full professional grade cameras usually on me that captured a wide picture of me where if I'm getting up and getting excited, they can see that. Meanwhile, I'm like scrunched into a 3-shot on a Zoom where I'm like moving like this. It's not the same. And we still put out great shows, and I think everyone did a really great job with it. But there's a lot that changed, and there's a lot of working parts to a Zoom setup. Plus, when you time out a television show, when you're doing it live, especially, you can see really quickly if you're going to go over, if you're going to go under, the adjustments you can make, and you can make those on the fly. When you're recording things set by set over Zoom, the whole timing aspect's off. Like we got producers calling us like, hey, we're 5 minutes over. We got to cut this segment. We got to cut this. And I'm like, that's you. Like that I'm sorry I rambled. Like, but that, like, you can cut. This is your show. Cut everything. Just don't tell me. I'll watch it and then I'll be like, oh yeah, that's okay. Because I sound like an idiot in the 5 minutes that you cut anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's more restrictions with doing things over Zoom, like, and especially with COVID and everyone's schedules, like doing Zoom podcasts for me makes my life way easier, especially like having one camera and being able to edit audio and, video go right hand in hand. I don't have to sync anything up, which that is great. Like, but there is some things like it's not the same kind of conversation. Like I try to make it as like humane as possible and trying to make us have like a real conversation like we would in person. But like I was saying before, it's just, it's not the same just talking to someone, across a table, like JRE, and just making, strict eye contact with the really fancy microphones that I really want, but are way too expensive and out of my budget.
I feel that.
Yeah, exactly. But dude, that's another great production. So have you been trying to like listen to a lot of, because in terms of learning the art of broadcasting, I'm very interested in like, is there any real like concrete way of like a course of learning to become better at the job?
Becoming better at the job is understanding how others have been successful in the job and then taking your personality and applying it to that. Because I think something that I think I get caught up in, and a lot of people going in this industry get caught up in, is what are the best in this industry doing? What are the best in this industry? What do they sound like? What are their signature calls? And the truth is, nobody's hiring Ray Dunne to be Joe Buck. Joe Buck is Joe Buck. I can't be Joe Buck. But if I see something that works for him, like the succinct way he calls a game, where it's very, when he has a big play happen, he's not giving you a ton of blah, 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 blah. It's home run, 3-2, Phillies lead it. And it's that's his style of it. And if I like that style, I can kind of apply it to the way I go. Or, Tom McCarthy. Tom McCarthy is a perfect example of someone who saw what worked for someone. He watched Harry Kalas. He had a front row seat to one of the great broadcasters of a generation. But nobody's saying Tom McCarthy is Harry Kalas. Because if he tried to be Harry Kalas, everyone would lose their mind. Because Tom McCarthy has done what works for Tom McCarthy. And that's, I think, honestly, that's the best course of learning in this, is picking up the industry standards, what the industry expects from you, and what the best are doing, but taking that and forming your own path with it.
My buddy, I did a podcast with my buddy John Broughton, and the one thing that he said is he's a videographer, and he said like the first person that inspired him was like, yeah, I'm sure you heard of like Casey Neistat.
Yep.
And he was saying that, Casey Neistat states like if you try and make a Casey Neistat vlog or video, you've already failed before you started, because that's not your story. And that goes, I think that is applied to everything in life. You can't just make a carbon copy of what someone else does, because then it takes away from like your work as well. Like I'm sure that there's obviously skills that go along with it. And if you learn from people, it helps. But there's that other side where I don't want to do exactly what he does, like you were saying before, because then I'm not Ronan Bell, I'm not Ray Dunne, whatever it may be, and it would take away from how you're speaking in general, and taking away from that personality that you already have.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a humanity business. Why do we have commentators? Really, the videographers are showing you the game. We have commentators because it feels unnatural to watch a game so quietly. You want the conversation. You want that person in your living room who's guiding you through it, who you feel a connection to. And whether or not you love or hate them, you feel an emotion towards them. And that's what this is about. Humanity is at the center of why we have broadcasters, because the game would go on without them. You can film a game and do it without broadcasters, but listen to an entire game without a broadcaster and tell me how odd it is. It's a whole connectivity thing. That's honestly what you're trying to do. You're facilitating a conversation that's reaching millions of living rooms, or in the case of the broadcasts I do, tens of hundreds of living rooms.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's a really interesting point, and that camaraderie, like that's the whole point of like radio shows, and now like radio shows turned into podcasts and so on and so forth with like YouTube and all that. But it is really about that camaraderie in the press box too, because there's never just one person. There's usually two, sometimes three, depending on what you're watching or what game it is. And that interaction that they have with each other is so important to keeping your attention. And especially I don't want to knock baseball. I love baseball, but here's the thing. It's going downhill. And the thing is, in terms of keeping viewers' attention, is those people in the booth. If they can make it sound exciting and fun, like people thought it was 10 years ago when it was probably its most popular, more people will watch. And that's an interesting point that you're making, because I never really thought of it that way until you kind of brought that up.
Right. It's also a point of baseball announcers. We have an epidemic of baseball color commentators who are former players, who are big name former players, but also hate the current game. So if you are consistently being fed that, oh, this game's taking too long, I want to go home, oh, these new guys throwing fast aren't fun, these numbers suck. If you're constantly being fed that by someone that you feel like is in your living room talking with you about the game, slowly you're going to feel that way about the game too. Like, it's just kind of one of those things where you trust John Kruk's the one that comes to mind because he's a local guy, and I don't think he does a terrible job, but I think that there's some times where he's a little bit like, oh, this game today. And I think that's a clear problem. Like, he gets excited about baseball, which is great. But he has to remember that his excitement about baseball also mirrors the excitement of a town, of a community, of, even people from out of market watching, a nation, about baseball. So when we talk about where baseball is going, baseball has a lot to do to reinvent itself and make itself that exciting thing. The biggest enemy to Major League Baseball has been itself. Its marketing has been lackluster at times. They don't do a great job of moving stars into the forefront of the conversation. And part of that is because of how localized baseball is. You think about the NBA, the NFL, those are very national brands. Like, you will watch football because it's football, because like the Cowboys are on, you want to see the Cowboys play football.
Yeah.
But baseball is more of a localized, you're more focused on your local team. I feel like, at least. I feel like that's the baseball is much more close to the community than the footballs, the basketballs of the world. Those are both more national. Baseball is more local. And that could be their downfall. That could be it. I don't know. I tend to think the game is still growing. I think it's still got a lot to go. And I don't know. I'm not a doom and gloom guy for baseball.
Yeah, 100%. You can't look. I mean, obviously there's a duality to everything, right? But if you can kind of focus on the, more positive standpoint, especially being an announcer, there will be positive results that come. It's just how human nature is and how the universe works in some weird way. Don't know why, but it's how it's worked. But the point that I thought that was interesting is that you were saying that baseball doesn't put their players at the forefront. And what you were saying before is how, like, if I want to watch like the Heat play, like I'm going to go watch a Heat play, even if I'm not from Miami. And in basketball, like if I like LeBron James, I'm going to tune in and watch LeBron play. It's not like I can go watch that game because it's more televised across the nation. But when it comes to baseball, if I want to watch Mike Trout play, I have to spend $100 on a package in order to be able to just to watch the game on TV.
And therein lies another problem with watching Mike Trout play versus watching LeBron James play. You're watching LeBron play, you're seeing him go up and down the court, and he likely touches the ball every possession. Mike Trout, especially in the worst years of the Angels, will get an at-bat every 3 innings, and he might make one incredible play in the field, and are you going to watch all 9 innings? So it's also the style of the game. You know, it's the phrase different strokes for different folks, really, because, you know, some people that they need the constant engagement of it. For me, I can sit back and I'll enjoy watching Joe Schmo, the 9th hitter for the Angels, try and muster up an at-bat against Mike No Name from the Orioles pitching that day. You know, I love the intricacies of the game of baseball. Not everyone does. So they have to grow their audience through their stars, and then through their stars kind of communicate the game that baseball is. Because if they follow the exact marketing plan of an NBA, of an NFL, it's not the same game. It's not the same speed.
Well, there's like an appreciation for if you have played baseball or have known it long enough, like you have an appreciation like, wow, that guy just made contact with 100-mile-an-hour fastball.
Yeah, right.
That's insane. And like I can say I used to play baseball. Like that is hard to do. But most people are like, it's hitting a baseball. It's not that hard. Whereas if I take it into like other sports like basketball or football, like making it like just nailing someone or like having a big slam dunk, that's like, wow, like this is so athletic. And that could happen 15 times right. a game. Yeah. And now Twitter goes here and the editors at Sports Center and ESPN or Barstool, Bleacher Report, they're like, wow, I could make 15 posts tonight. Whereas baseball, it's like, wow, I might be able to make 2 or 3.
And the biggest thing that's gotten me about this baseball season so far is we are watching an incredible generation of pitching happen right in front of our eyes. We've had 4 no-hitters. The third of the 4 would be Madison Bumgarner's 7-inning no-hitter. I'm not here to make a statement on that. Please, just get off your high horses, everyone that watches baseball. They didn't get a hit. The game ended. Relax, okay? The point being, pitchers have never been this talented, this skilled, and it's quite shown. Now, the way batters approach can also be an attribute to this. You know, some of the new age thought, I will, whatever. But we're watching an incredible run of pitching. But how many people are watching Blake Snell make a guy look foolish? Like Pitching Ninja, Pitching List, those accounts are awesome. Like the amount of work it goes into being a great pitcher, but all people see is a guy throwing a baseball. So again, it's about understanding the game. For me, that's where you're going to get the most people. You have to market the big star and then parlay that into this is how the game works and this is why it's so impressive. But then people stop listening because you throw too many numbers at them. They're like, yeah, I'm just trying to enjoy some sports. And that's kind of what you get into.
Well, Ray, what stinks is that like you're a part of the minority. No one wants it. No one wants to see good pitching. They want to see home runs.
No, that's right.
And that's what makes it cool because that's where, you get your clips. But and like you were saying before, you need an appreciation in order to like understand the game and to like have some kind of viewership inside that field. Like UFCs or MMA is a really great example because everyone will watch it just to see someone get knocked out in one big hit. Yep. But they also have a ton of viewership coming in from, wow, like there's an art to this. Like, you know how hard it is to like dodge a punch? Like what's the technique behind this? Right. But with baseball, it's the complete opposite. You have, I'm there for a baseball game and I want to see a home run hit. And that's pretty much it. If you're just the average fan and if nothing happens, you're like, wow, this stinks. And another thing is baseball is way more exciting to watch in person than anything else. I think that's like a big thing as well, that when you're just like watching a baseball game on TV, like there's so many other things that can go through your head and like, wow, I wonder what else is on the TV. Cause like that happens. There's so many options nowadays. I want to go watch YouTube. I want to go listen to a podcast, listen to this podcast, which I wouldn't have a problem with. But anyway, coming back to the point of, I just think that baseball, much like every other sport, like every sport pretty much is better to watch in person, but just it's the atmosphere that goes into baseball and with the history that's just behind it is where I think that it makes baseball what it is.
Yeah. I the appreciation of the game of baseball, the history of it is one of the big things. And I think that's also becomes a contentious issue because as baseball tries to modernize itself and make it the game that people want it to be, you also start to lose some of the diehards who are like, this game isn't what I knew as it was. But look at the other major sports. Football doesn't look like the way football looked 30 years ago.
Oh,
Basketball
God, no.
doesn't look that way. It's a sign of the times. Players are more athletic across all sports right now. It changes the way the game has to be played. And whether or not some of these Major League Baseball ideal rules are good or not, we could sit here all day and this is good because this is bad because of that. They're trying. And that's the best you can say for them. They're doing an effort to try and make this game more appealing, more exciting, more fun. Honestly, I'm fine with it the way it is. I mean, I signed up to go do 45 games in Edenton, North Carolina with the summer league team that I'm so excited for. So clearly they don't need to sell me on the game of baseball, but I'm sure there are people that they do.
Well, I just think that it's from a cultural perspective, I think it's a generation standpoint. Like my grandparents and like even my parents, they like if something's broke, don't fix it. I want to do the same thing routinely over and over and over again. Whereas our generation, man, we've been having stuff thrown at us our entire life. Like, who would have thought that I would be talking to you on a call like this 10 years ago when we were sitting in Little League, watching our buddies play baseball? You wouldn't. That's the thing. This adaptation through our generation and the new generations that are coming up is just how it's always been. It's been routine in our head. And that's where I think that's the part that the older generations and people older than me or you don't really get because they want to see the old school way, which, I mean, there's some points where you would probably like to as well, just seeing like a couple of things change. Nothing's going to be perfect, no matter how you do it. And there's always going to be someone bashing you with their other opinion.
Right. Well, yeah, no, getting bashed for your opinions is nothing new. I'm on the app of Twitter. I tweet a lot. Yeah, people don't love everything you have to say. But no, I think it's a great point in that even just in general, if it's not broke for you, doesn't mean it doesn't need to be fixed for someone else. Like, if the game of baseball is not broken for you, that's great. Continue to enjoy it, but that doesn't mean it's not broken for you. If other things in this world are not broken for you, that doesn't mean others don't need fixing.
That's 100%.
Just the point.
Yeah, it's just I don't know where it's going to go in the next couple of years. I hope that the baseball starts to come back up, and I think that they could do something big with, like, if they just started pushing video games more. And I'm a big fan. Like, I don't play video games in just the world of marketing. 2K and Madden, they're so popular, and football and basketball become more popular because they play the video game and it's fun and it's exciting and they know the players from that. With baseball, there's not as many people buying things like that, which in turn means less people are going to watch sport. Like, I'm sure when you were a kid, you learned who everyone was off of like Madden or 2K, right?
Yep. And I think one big thing for baseball is they've had the show exclusively on PlayStation for years. That's missing a huge market of people who are Xbox players. And that sounds so dumb. Anyone who's like over the age of like 40 probably thinks like, oh, that doesn't mean it. That means a lot. There's a lot of kids you're missing out that would be opening up, a Fernando Tatis cover this year and finding out about him, finding out about the league. I also think one thing that contributes to football and basketball seemingly so far ahead is collegiate level. You have these guys are being hyped up all fall, all winter long, and then they go right into the league. The best college baseball player right now might get out of the minor leagues a year or two from now.
Yeah.
And 2 years from now is probably like the earliest we see them.
Yeah, like Mickey Moniak, right when the Phillies drafted him, you're like, oh, I want to see this guy play. Well, you have to wait 2 years, and then he randomly comes up and is like, oh, I forgot about him. And no one, this is like, as being a minor league broadcast announcer, which I think is really cool and gets a different perspective. Like, you're going to be spending time with the players who aren't known at all.
I'm going to step in right here. Summer collegiate. So I'm with college players this summer, not minor league.
Okay.
But basically they are all trying to get themselves through this summer, a bigger name. A lot of, MLB scouts will be filtering through, coming to games, checking guys out. I mean, we have a kid from South Carolina who's an absolute stud. So it's one of those things where you're like, wow, like I'm going to be with people who are all trying to take that next step, get themselves to the major leagues. And it is one of those things where, had this been a summer basketball league, House of Highlights would probably be parked right outside the stadium every day, just waiting for someone to show up to get a film of a dunk that they could post 10 times in the next week.
Yeah, that is a really interesting point, because it is very rare to see, not very rare, but it's more uncommon to see a high school baseball highlight on social media or wherever it may be, or even college. I couldn't tell you where to watch a college baseball game on TV. I don't even know if you can. You might have to stream it online. Like that right there is a huge problem, because I know the players from college football from watching it on TV and things like that, and then seeing highlights of them. I couldn't tell you who one college baseball player is outside of like Penn State, which is sad.
Yeah. No, and that's a huge part. And college baseball is a good product. I've watched more of it this spring because, I actually now have people that I'm watching because I want to get to know their game before I get to know them in 2 weeks' time. But it's a great product, but you're right. It doesn't have the billing of a college, football, college basketball. Yeah. It's a shame.
Yeah. So how'd you get the in with this organization here?
So I have a great professor here at Temple, Matt Fine, who works Al Sports Update. He's our executive producer. I've worked with him since I got on campus. And last August, he gave me a call and he was like, my son played for this summer collegiate baseball team. His son's a baseball player at St. Joe's. He's like, he played for this team. They had this internship where someone's doing play-by-play. They're writing articles post-game. They're, maintaining the media relations for the team with local media. He's like, you would be good for it. He's like, I think when it opens up, I'm going to send you the thing. You should apply. So last August, the wheels are turning in my head. I was like, because this was the plan for what I want to do with the summer of my college experience. I had been talking leading up to the summer last year, like when teams were thinking about playing. I had been talking with a friend of mine who was doing some work and seeing if something would work out. Nothing came to fruition there. So this was the last summer in between college years for me. I'm going to my senior year, and I put a lot of effort. I sent out a ton of applications, ton of reels, just reached out to anyone I could about this summer. And Edenton was the first one that really got back to me late December, early January, because most of the hiring for this is done January to February into March-ish. So they got back to me in January, interviewed, talked with them, and the GM and I had a great conversation just about the town. Because, I'm really excited, obviously, to do my job, but I'm also excited to be immersed in a baseball community, be immersed with people who are so invested in this team, become kind of, a quasi spokesperson, quasi, representative of an organization. It's something that I think is tremendous. And I really fed that throughout the entire interview process. And we had a great conversation about that, what my role would be at work. And I left that interview like, this went well. Like this is something that I think could happen. And I talked with Matt, and I'm sure Matt advocated for me. His son's playing on the team again. So I have to thank Matt Fine a lot for this, but they gave me the call and said, if you're willing to accept, we're willing to have you. I was like, no, I'm kidding. Let's go. Let's make this happen. And from there, that was it. I was all so I've been doing press releases every week for them in the lead up to going down there. Last press release comes out, in the next week for me. So I'm ready to get down there. A week from today, I'm leaving for Virginia for a couple of days, and then I'm headed right down there. And then it's time to get to work.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. And what I love that what you said before is said like I applied in 15 different, like 100 different, however
Oh,
many it was.
it was a
If you,
ton.
yeah, exactly. The point and like the piece of advice here would just be, if I throw a bunch of things at the wall, one's got to stick. One stuck and it worked. I almost just spilled my water everywhere. That would have been horrific. But anyway, that's awesome to me that you put yourself on the line and just try and any opportunity that is there, go for it. Because at the end of the day, Ray, what is the worst thing that someone can say to you?
No.
Yeah, and like it's no big deal. It's not personal.
No, that's the thing. I know it's not there's a wealth of tremendously talented people trying to do exactly what I'm doing. Not oblivious to that. I'm definitely not the most talented out there. There's plenty of them out there. I just need someone to give me an opportunity. That's all I need. I need one opportunity, and someone gave me an opportunity, and now they're going to reap the benefits from it. That's the way I see it. You give me an opportunity, I'm going to make you look smart. I'm going to make it look like you made the right decision.
Yeah.
That's the trade-off here. You gave me the opportunity. Now I'm going to make sure that you look good for giving me that opportunity. That's the way it has to be. I could apply 1,000 different places. And if only one gets back to me, but they give me that opportunity, that's a success. That's not a failure. 999 others don't count. I have nothing against 999 others, but they don't count because I got the one I needed. That's how you have to look at this. That you're not a failure because you didn't get one, you didn't get two, you didn't get as many as you applied for. You're a success because you got the one you want.
Exactly. And that's like what people more or less need to think of, because like at the end of the day, if you thought about as a percentage, like very low percentage, like 0.1%. And like if you look at it that way, I don't look at it that way. But if you looked at it that way, like I get it, like that stinks. And there's always people that, hey, maybe they don't get an internship, or they get an internship, but it's not what they want to do. There's very few people that get this opportunity of like, wow, I have one thing here and one thing, like something I want to do, internship, combine them, and this is my job now, which is this thing that I can read it in your body, I can read it in your personality, and the way you're speaking, like, man, like I'm appreciative as hell that I got this opportunity, which is the part that I think is so cool. Like, this is what you want to do, man. Like, yes. There's no doubt in my mind, like you want to talk, be the voice of an organization. Like, that's awesome. You figured out like, hey, like this is my passion. This is like, I need to make money someday, obviously. Yeah. I need a job. Let me work my tail off in order to be able to make my dream like come true in a sense. Like, obviously, you don't want to be the voice of the Edmonton, whatever it is, forever. It's just it's a step in the journey onto the way up.
Right. And I think I do think one thing that I lost, there's a couple things I've gained with perspective as I've continued to go. Edenton this summer for me is my focus. Like I can't let the summit be what I keep my eyes on. I got to keep trudging forward in my journey. I'm going to put the 45 best games that I can do as a broadcaster and give as much as I can to a community in terms of serving them, press releases, whatever they need. They're going to get out my 100%. Edenton's my focus 100% and everything. And that's kind of where I think that I've changed in the last couple of years, is that I got so caught up with where am I going that I lost where I am right now. And I think that's a great focus for me to have, is that what I'm doing right now is the most important thing in the world to me. Yeah. And I think there's also, and one of my friends was texting me because I had some personal news tweet set out like 3 different times this semester. I accepted a job in Edenton to be the Steamers director of broadcast media relations. I'm going to be the general manager at WHIP. I'm an anchor at Alice. Like, it is like, oh wow, it must be great to be Ray Dunne right now. And it's like, yes, obviously, but it's great right now because the last 3, 4, 5 or 6 years, you put in effort to put yourself in a position where you can have these titles. Nothing's going to change about the way I work. What I'm doing is changing. Instead of me getting assigned a showcase a few days before, now I'm going to have a consistent baseball game. But the point I think I'm trying to make here is, as good as it seems can be as bad as it gets. And, a year ago, I was sitting here totally uncertain about the sports world's future, hadn't done much at all. And for someone who's a sports guy, my identity is tied into that. Without sports, who am I? Who is I? And I think a lot more about finding out about yourself and finding out about how you work is going to make you happy regardless of what you're doing. I just happen to be fortunate enough where I put myself in a position to capitalize on what I want to do. But it took learning about me. It took, taking my identity away from sports and taking it to who is Ray Dunne. Just be Ray Dunne, and everything else is going to play into its hand. And now I'm in a position where I can capitalize because I understand who I am and what makes me work.
Well, yeah, it's that evolution in character that everyone, I don't care who the hell you are, every single person needs to experience a trench in their life. Like you were saying, like I was probably working my tail off and there's no reward. Like there is no light at the end of the tunnel that I can see right now. And that at the time being, it stinks. But now you look back on that and you're like, wow, this made me become determined, motivated in order to get to this next step that I wanted to in my life. Like you were saying before, when I was, down for the count, like everything, like I wasn't getting a whole ton of credit and no reward. I'm not getting paid for what I'm doing. It's hard to see that other side of it and that other perspective where like you're at the very bottom and you look up and you're like, wow, that might be intimidating. But like you were saying before, all right, now I got this another step up, one more. And now we're here at Edenton. That's the part where people miss out. Like you were saying, like I used to worry about up here, like on top, like the summit of the mountain is what you said. And now I'm focusing on one little step at a time. Obviously, like you have a dream, you have a goal, and you have a big aspiration, but you can't be focused on that 100%, 90%, 50% of the time. You need to keep that in the back of your head and realize that what I'm doing now is the hard work and the foundation. And I'm slowly starting to build a house with what I have now to work my way up to that point.
Right. And I think one of the biggest things, and this gets into a little bit of wisdom that I'll drop at the end, but one of the biggest things for me is when you're climbing, I think a lot of people get caught up in who's that ahead of me? Who's that behind me? Who's there right next to me? Can I give them a quick shove and they're going to drop and I'm going to stay here and there's one less competition. And it's so much more about grabbing hands with those who are close to you and trying to pull everyone up. I really think, and in competitive industries, it's tough to see that because for me, as a freshman here, I was like, how'd they get that interview? How are they doing this? Why are they doing that? What's wrong with me? What's so great? It's not what's wrong with you. It's what's great about them. And what's great about them can be applied to you and make you even better. So you have to, like, a lot of what, again, perspective has given me, especially, again, the last year without sports was just brutal. Because if you want to talk about branding, if you mention the name Ray Dunne to someone, more than likely than that, within the first 5 words, sports is going to be one of them. But you want to be so much more than just that. Just someone who does sports. You want to be someone who people can go to and people want to be around and people who want to advocate for. And that's, I think, the perspective that I've had that, it's made me a better person. If you remember nothing else about Ray Dunne, don't let it be about sports. Let it be about someone that you could count on, someone that you could be a friend to. And that's more what I've emphasized the last year. I've worked very hard, but I've also been way better of just appreciating who's around me, trying to help everyone around me instead of being so focused on there's the summit. That's where I'm headed.
Yeah, it's the tip. You see the tip. Everyone sees the tip of the iceberg, and no one really sees what is happening underneath and inside internally of a human being, which has its gifts and has its takes, like everything else in life. But Ray, I love that. I love the point that you're making, that you said that like I learned a lot about myself through the past year without sports, because now you have to allocate your time to something else rather than what you've been doing your entire life so far. Like you were saying, if someone says Ray Dunne, I'm going to say sports, obviously. But the point that I like that you said was I was able to grow. You can't stay in the same place in life. You have to be able to grow. And like you said, like when you're a little kid, like, oh, I'm going to grow up. That's how I used to say. You need to be able to grow in your character as well. Like I'm sure that like I'm not the same person that I was a year ago because of COVID. And people would say like, oh, it has been horrible. I hate my life. I don't want to do anything. Good. Do something with that. You have so much free time. Like you were saying before, like you probably had a ton of free time. Let me go look and try and do something else. Let me get better at what I'm doing already. It could be a European tennis match. I'm going to try and announce it and see if I can do it still and just keep practicing. But Ray, I love the points. We're almost out of time here. So I want to ask you the age old question that has been around since the very first episode of the Ronan Bell Show, which is like 7 months now. That's kind of crazy. But what would be one piece of wisdom that you want to end off the episode with?
Comparison is the thief of joy. If you spend your entire life trying to figure out why you're not someone else or why you are not doing what someone else is doing, you are never going to fully appreciate yourself and you are never going to be fully happy. I can say that after a tumultuous, the standard tumultuous 2020 for myself, that I focused a lot on just being who I am and continuing to succeed in the roles that I'm in. And that's made me a much happier person. I've got tremendous people that I work around here at Temple. My good friend Sam Cohn, I'll never be as good a writer as him. I will never understand football the way my friend Sam Newman does. I will never be as strong on camera as some of the incredible people I work at TV with. And it's about understanding that, they're great at those things. And I have those people in my life who are going to help me get better at what I'm doing. That's, for me, what it's been. Comparison is the thief of joy. Do not let yourself get bogged down by what you're not. Instead, celebrate what you are, and it will lead to you being in a much better mental state. That's my wisdom for you, Ronan.
Stop focusing on everyone else. Focus what you do well, and all the rest will follow. Ray, thank you so much for coming on to the show today, man. Is there anything that you want to plug?
Edenton Steamers, at Edenton Steamers on Twitter. Follow the ball club. I'll be live on their YouTube, I guess, 45 times this summer. Well, let's go 50 something because we're making a championship push. I can already feel it. So be sure to follow them at RayDunBTB if you want to follow me on Twitter. At Done Deal Pod. I'll just start throwing everything out there. At WHIP Radio. I'll just start throwing everything. At Al Sports Update. All great places to follow to find stuff that I do. Ronan, thank you so much. I appreciate it. One thing to leave all of you, go appreciate everyone around you. They're doing tremendous things. That's another thing. Be appreciative of everything you got going on, all the people around you. Make sure you let everyone know they're doing a great job. Ronan, you did a great job. I appreciate being here. Thank you so much.
Right. Of course, man. Anytime. We'll do another episode when you're a big time guy on Sports Center and we'll look back on this and we'll laugh. But guys, that's it for another episode of the Ronan Bell Show. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Make sure you hit that follow button, like whatever you want to do. Go follow Ray on Twitter. All the accounts you said, go follow them. Go follow my Instagram too. Go on Instagram for once. Go check me out. I hate saying that, but I'll do it anyway for the plug. But guys, again, have a great rest of your day. Hope you're getting through whatever you're getting through. And as always, y'all just keep on keeping on.